everyone. I am here today to give you a little insight into the writer's mind and the way that we think and the way that we operate. And I want to do that by kind of giving you an explanation of some of the verbiage we use, right? If you read any tweets from the hashtag writing community on Twitter, or even if you just go through my blog posts, you probably have heard me talk about things, and if you're not a writer yourself, you have probably no idea what I'm talking about. So this video is for all of the brand new writers out there, or all of the people who are related to a writer, or friends with a writer, or dating a writer, or whatever. You know a writer and you want to know what they're talking about. This video is for you. So, let's get right into it. The first phrase or word I want to talk about today is how we think about lengths of our books or projects that we're working on. Page counts would be the typical, page count is how a reader thinks of something. Like, I pick up a book and I'm like, oh, this is a 300-page book. Great. But as a writer, I don't think that way. Even in terms of blog posts or articles, I think in terms of the word count. So I know for a fact that most articles are about 1,000 to 1,500 words. My genre that I write, crime suspense novels, those books ought to be between 65,000 words and 75,000 words. In general, that seems to be the industry standard. Fantasy novels, those are going to be more like 100,000 words, which, if you've ever written a 5,000 word essay or a research paper, you probably haven't even thought about that in word count either, have you? One page is about 300 words if it's a double-spaced Times New Roman 12-point font page, right? So when we talk about books and our works in progress, and we're talking about it in word count, think of it that way. So if we say, I wrote 1,000 words today, we wrote at least 3 pages, right? Something like that could help you as you understand how much time and effort we're putting into these things that we're writing, especially because it's kind of a unique thing to figure out in that way. It's not your typical way of measuring something is how many words there are in it. So we think in terms of word count, not page count. Another thing that you probably have heard of if you've hung out with fantasy writers or sci-fi writers is the idea of world building. And that is essentially, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's creating an entire new world. So when J.R.R. Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings and he created the world of Middle-earth, he spent a lot of time putting effort into every individual culture, every individual, languages were his huge thing, but, the hobbits and the fact that they exist there in the Shire and, that there are elves over here and, humans exist in this world and here's where they all live and here's, the different kingdoms of the, humans, but also the elves and, these elves don't like these elves and so on and so forth, right? And elves and dwarves hate each other because, all of that. That's world building. We do this a lot when it comes to creating fantasy novels or sci-fi novels because the idea is that you are going to another planet or you're doing space travel, and how does space travel work in our version of space travel rather than someone else's version of space travel? So Star Trek versus Star Wars, those worlds are very different even though they both take place in space. Same thing with Firefly versus Star Wars. If you have watched any Firefly, you know that world and the culture and the way that everything works together and the alliance and the history of it and even just typical jobs, that's all world building. It's so much more than just creating here's the planet that they live on, but it's also here's how the culture works and here are the main pastimes and here's the customs of this particular planet versus the customs of this planet and so on and so forth. So that's world building. It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like it is, but it's everything that takes place in creating a new world that doesn't exist yet. Again, if you hang out with any fantasy writer for any period of time, you will come across the idea of a hard magic system or a soft magic system. The best way to describe the difference between these is that a soft magic system is kind of more of a willy-nilly, I can attune myself with the magic of the universe and make magic happen, whereas a hard magic system is a lot more set rules of magic. You do this and you do this, and that always happens every time. It's scientific magic in a way rather than like emotional magic. But even an emotional magic caster could be part of a hard magic system, and it just has a lot to do with how set in stone everything is, because if it's like, you do the thing and you get magic, it's soft magic, and it's kind of like really squishy, wavy lines of like, this happens sometimes and magic happens. There's still parameters, but it's like, yeah, there's magic. Whereas a hard magic system is a lot more set in, here are the rituals, here are like the different belief systems, here's how magic happens, here's different ways that magic can happen. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. It's cool. I struggle with magic in general, which is why you won't find it in my books typically. But it's so cool to be able to create something like that I really look up to all of my friends who are capable of doing that. Now we get into some of the writing terms that we just use in reference to characters. So we're going to cover OC, MC, and POV, antag, and protag, all right in a row here. So an OC is an original character. It's somebody you created, right? An MC is a main character, which is the protagonist of the story usually. The main character is who the story is about. A POV is a point of view. You can have a point of view character, and that can change throughout the book. So the books that I write have multiple point of view characters. All of them are OCs and all of them are MCs. If they're a point of view, then they're an MC, essentially, usually. But not all of them are protagonists, because some of them are antagonists. Which is protag and antag. Protag, again, same idea of like your main character and your MC, where they're the person the story's about, and your antagonist, is the person trying to getting in the way of them achieving their goals one way or another, so on and so forth. Again, with the acronyms, you will hear a debate in the writing world. Some people call them one thing, the other people call them the other thing. I am personally in the camp of calling it a WIP. Work in progress, W.I.P, is the other phrase that people will use to, talk about that. I say WIP because it's faster, and usually if I'm already shortening something, I don't want to have to say all of the syllables that are involved in spelling out each letter. You wouldn't call the FBI a FUBA, but I don't know. Pros and cons, right? Same concept, though. It stands for work in progress, so it's W.I.P. I refer to it as a WIP just because it's just what I do. Also, I've learned this phrase by reading it and never hearing it out loud. And the way that I read it in my head was WIP. Whereas some of my friends get mad at me when I say that because they're like, no, Jory, it's W.I.P. And that's it. And that's probably because when they first read it, they read it as the acronym and they read it as W.I.P. And that's just how it got stuck. So you'll hear a slight debate. But if you see the letter combination of W.I.P., it means work in progress, and it's the thing that the writer is most recently working on. So, example, my current WIP, this is how you would use it in a sentence. My current WIP is a crime suspense novel. It's a kidnapping. So, if you're into that sort of thing, I guess stick around, and I'll keep giving you updates as they happen. The last word I want to talk about is something my friends and I use all the time, and it is fluff. I am really bad at writing fluff. Some of my friends excel at writing fluff. What is fluff? Well, it's all of the stuff that has very little to do with the plot and everything to do with character development and taking up time and just allowing the world to exist as it is, right? So, if it's the characters going on a date in a suspense novel, that would be kind of fluff, unless there's a very good reason for them to be going on the date because of the plot. On and on. So it's all of the stuff that, it's like filler. That's fluff. But it's usually light and happy, better times in the lives of these characters, which is probably why I'm really bad at it, because my characters go through heck, for lack of a better term. And I am very bad at giving them a break, which, in order for me to give them a break, I would have to write fluff. So, sorry in advance for that. But that's what fluff is it's the right, like, the light, fluffy, fill in all of the spaces, allow them to just be people sort of stuff on the page, right? I find other places to put that in, but it's not usually a very light or, gentle, fluffy thing. I like every single word in my books and every single scene to have a purpose, which has pros and cons. But that means that I don't have a ton of space for fluffy things. Which perhaps I should shift to that, because then you'll get to know the characters better. I don't know. People have different philosophies on these things. Fluff is not inherently bad. I just think it has a place, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. Are there other words that you have heard your writer friends use that you really want explained? Put them down below, and I will try to answer them. Put those in the comments. If I haven't heard of it, though, it might just be a your friend thing, so I don't know how to help you there. But I hope this helps you. I have done this sort of thing before on my blog, where I did a guide to fandom speak. So if you're curious about that at all, I can put a link to that down below as well. If you're new to fandom and you're like, what is going on, right? Like, don't worry, I got you. I've explained all of this stuff before. So I will see you next time. Until then, go explore the rest of my channel. I do a lot of videos about the writing and publishing industry, but I also do a lot of things that are just me hanging out, like me reading my own writing, my old writing, or like reading writing memes, or just chilling and having fun and exploring things like this. So glad you're here. Go explore the rest of my channel, and I will see you next time. I post on Mondays and Fridays, so keep an eye out. Bye!